and what cannot be printed. Is that simple? But I'm not invited on most of the stock shows because all they want to do is sell you more stock. You know, I don't trust paper at all. Toilet paper's on it, I don't trust it. So what would you advise somebody wants to switch out of paper into what you're doing? Any advice?
A lot of our clients, you know, they're in paper. I mean, they take a portion of their income and they put it into oil and gas or gold or silver or something, you know, just to have that diversification. And so, you know, for an investor that, you know, just a normal investor, you know, a lot of them, they obviously want that diversification and the energy, because I think everybody sees that, you know, they can see through this stuff that this administration is trying to push. I mean, they go to the gas pump every day. You know, diesel is still selling for close to $5 a gallon. I mean, you know, as far as that, gasoline is still, you know, even though they can continue to say, you know, that it's going down, I mean, they're depleting our national reserves. Well,
why are they depleting our reserves? They could just drill more.
One thing, they want to do away with hydrocarbons. Secondly is you've got a midterm election coming up that obviously they don't want to see high oil prices. They're going to stop taking oil out of the national reserve, I mean, the defense reserve, and then they're going to, you know, we're going to see high prices again. And, but that's the reason why. How many barrels of oil have they, how many millions of barrels? I think they're releasing 1 million barrels a day just to keep the price down.
Well, the first most important thing about America is freedom. See, you can be a capitalist, you can be a communist. I have a lot of friends who are communists, but they don't know it. That's probably our greatest asset, is that freedom. But we have to fight back. That's all I'm saying. Biden, and I'm not political, I just think he's the most incompetent. I can't believe he cuts down the Keystone XL pipeline, then blames Russia for raising gas prices. He opens the borders, he cuts down our oil supply, and then he blames Putin for our problems. That's a weak president.
When Biden took us off the pipeline, oil prices went up. Oil produces fertilizer. And when fertilizer is no longer cheap, people can't produce food. And the average American has nothing. 40% of Americans have nothing. Inflation is going to make them very upset. A stock market crash will bring down the baby boomers. So we're in serious, serious trouble here. This guy Biden is the worst I have ever seen. Man is denial. And today what's happening is Russia and China are now ganging up on the U.S. It's really a dangerous world right now. It's getting worse. When Trump was in power, I was a bit optimistic.
The problem with oil going from 30 to 130 just temporarily was it wiped out the middle class. Inflation. And food prices are going to go through the roof because natural gas and oil go hand in hand. And that's how you make fertilizer. The point here is this. I was just watching CNBC, I think, and they were playing the hearings with Janet Yellen, and she's a greenie. She spent all this time talking about global warming, and I'm going, what about inflation? What about the war? What about the debt? And she's now a greenie. These guys are nuts, and we're listening to them. You have no idea what it was like. Some of you were too young. So one day rice would be $1, next day it'd be $2. And they had to keep whiting stuff out. You know, I'm going, holy mackerel. And then I put together, when I was flying in Vietnam, why my rich dad, who was Chinese, said, watch out, because they took the dollar off the gold standard. They're going to print money. It's called money supply, not interest rates. We're in a recession already because things are slowing. The velocity of money is slowing at high rates of speed. But also, it's going to crash the economy, and we may be going into a depression. I tell you something, I learned more in the 70s than I do today. When I was trying to put a real estate together when interest rates are 20%, you get really smart. I mean, I had to be creative and all this, still make it cash flow. So ladies and gentlemen, it's only how smart, you know, how creative, how smart you are in the future and how resourceful and resilient you are.
One of the reasons I love investing in oil production, I don't invest in oil companies like Exxon or Chevron. I actually invest in oil fields. And one of the reasons I love oil is because of the tax breaks, right? So if I put $100,000 into an oil investment, what happens next?
What happens is you get such a big deduction the first year that it's like the government handing you a check for about $30,000
So if I put $100,000 in, I get $30,000 back right there.
immediately.
So that's like a 30% return day one. So that's really what most people do not understand, that the tax laws are really incentives for professional investors.
That's exactly right. And this is true in most countries. While the tax laws vary on like oil and gas, in the U.S., anybody who invests in U.S. oil and gas, no matter where you live, gets that same tax benefit.
So let's say I put $100,000 in, and it's been very easy to get a 10% cash return. So the $100,000 I put in, and every year I get $10,000 coming back in. What kind of tax do I pay on that $10,000 in cash flow?
Oh, that's the next great thing from a tax standpoint in the U.S. You only pay tax on about 80% of that income.
So we get a tax break because we're doing what the government wants us to do, which is to provide energy and fuel. And, you know, oil doesn't just go to gasoline, it goes to fertilizer, plastics, and a whole bunch of building materials. So a civilized country runs on energy. Without energy, civilization would crash. And that's why the government gives us
tax incentives.
My background is oil. I drove oil tankers for Standard Oil. So as soon as Biden came into office and he cut the Keystone XL pipeline off, I know he was out to destroy America. He was going to raise inflation through the roof, so that would wipe out the middle class. And then he blames Russia, he blames this and all this. But look at what the man is doing. He is killing this country by expanding the gap between rich and poor. But when he cut off the XL pipeline, he destroyed the middle class. Because as a person standing there, you know, pumping gas in their SUV, watching the price go up, they can't afford to buy food. Americans can't survive now. And so that's what I look at, not what he says, but what has that man done. And I live in Arizona, and that border is wide open. So the way I get rich is that anything the Fed can print, I don't invest in. So the Fed cannot print oil. So I want oil wells. I'm talking about a good tax rate. They can't print cattle. So I invest in cattle. And they can't print apartment houses and commercial buildings. So I invest in those. Anything the Fed can print or Wall Street can print, I don't invest in.